Welcome back to The Current. This is Chris Nafis, pastor of Living Water Church. We've been on a bit of a hiatus after doing a season 2 and getting sort of busy in the fall. I've got some things lined up, hoping to start a season 3 of The Current soon. In the meantime, I wanted to share a little bit about an experience that I was sort of adjacent to. A little bit ago, there was a call for Clergy to come out to Minneapolis to support the resistance to the invasion of ICE to that city. I wasn't able to go, but I was able to have some of the friends that I've made over the course of my peacemaking work who were able to go and respond to that call. A few of them are joining me today to just talk about what happened, what they saw, and what it looks like for us to continue that work beyond. So today, Jen Manleaf, who's a programs manager at U Heights Center in Seattle, where they do a lot of work with unsheltered folks. Mindy Smith, Reverend Mindy Smith, who's the director of church engagement at Whitworth in Spokane, and Lynn Price, who is an artist and a hospital chaplain also in Spokane, are going to join me and just have an in-depth conversation about what's happening in Minneapolis and what that means for all of us who are trying to resist the forces of injustice in this world. Enjoy this, hopefully, and let it move you to get involved. Here it is. All right, well, thanks for joining me, friends. Just for listeners, about a week and a half ago, a group of us from Global Immersion got a text inviting us to come to Minneapolis because of all the things that are happening there. I myself, I wasn't able to come because of some family responsibilities, but some of my friends were able to come. And so I wanted to kind of invite them to tell their story and just share what's happening there, get some eyewitness accounts of like what they're seeing, what the clergy response looked like, and just all of it. So thank you, Jen and Mindy and Lynn, for coming on today. I appreciate you guys being here. And yeah, so can you just tell us the story? I think Mindy, you said you were willing to kind of give us a little timeline. So how did we get invited? How did you end up coming? Like what happened? Can you give us like the overview, the
Yeah,
bird's eye view of this whole thing?
yeah. Well, thanks so much for having us, Chris. This is another opportunity. It's been the response that we've all had to people that are interested in the stories and hearing what we learned and observed has been really overwhelming. So any opportunity that we have to keep telling people what we saw on the ground in Minneapolis just feels like a privilege and an honor to all of us. So thanks for the chance to have a conversation together. Um, I'll start by just letting everybody know that Jen and Lynn and I and Chris, we've all been trained up through Global Immersion around what it is to be an everyday peacemaker. We've all traveled to different cities based on different cohorts where they landed to do specific training with peacemakers on the ground, whether it was in the south of the United States or most recently, a group of us went to Belfast to study the Troubles. And so for us, we learn from peacemakers on the ground who have a history of this in their own country, what it looks like to be a peacemaker, what it looks like to sort of practice enemy love, what it is to reach to the other side of the fence, most figuratively and literally in Belfast. And so much of that was learning how, for all of us, what it is to be grounded in who we are as beloved children of God, to see the other and also invite them into relationship. And so for us, we've been trained up in this, and for me specifically, in Spokane, we've started a network of pastors that are really interested in the faith leaders that are interested in what it means to mobilize the church. How do we begin to move to these places in our neighborhoods that are more vulnerable? And so with the latest things happening in our world, we've been already forming relationships in our city, thinking about these things. And so it was about, 2.5 weeks ago that we were invited by some local pastors in Spokane that weren't a part of Global Immersion, but they are familiar with the work and the work that we're doing in Spokane. They invited us to consider what would it look like to go to Minneapolis because there was an organization there that was calling clergy to do a day of training on Thursday and then to join the larger march that was scheduled in Minneapolis on that Friday. And so that's where it began. And so a few of us in Spokane started talking about, could we pull this off? Because again, it was Saturday, we got the invite and we needed to fly Wednesday night. Um, and I had some resources within my office that could help with that. And then other people were scurrying. And then, yeah, Jarrett put a call out to all the Peace Fellows. And that ended up being 11 of us in Spokane that came and two in Seattle. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Jen. But we made a commitment at that point to, for the core of us to live together, to travel together. We got a van to drive around together and to really figure out the best ways to move into this. And then once we made the commitment to go, there was an hour and a half webinar with the organizers on the ground in which we got a really sobering reality check of what we were about to walk into. And so that's when we learned a lot about what this might entail because things on the ground in Minneapolis are changing so rapidly that they did a really good job to say, you need to really think about your why. Why would you even come to this? This really isn't about you. This is about bearing witness. This is about listening to stories. And this is about equipping you in the best ways we can so you can bring it back to your city because it will come to your city. And we would rather prepare you in the best ways that we could. And so because of all those things, because we were able, because there were resources, because our why was to really go and learn and bear witness, this group of us felt like we could go.
Yeah, and just to kind of place it, because like you said, are changing really quickly in Minneapolis. When the call came out, like I think Renee Good had already been shot, right?
Yes.
But this was before Alex Pretti had been
Hmm.
shot and killed, and so this is like right in the thick of it. What was your guys' understanding of like what was happening on the ground before you kind of said yes to
Hmm.
going?
I would say, yeah, this was post Renee Good, maybe a week out. I'm a little hazy on the
Yeah.
dates now. But definitely had been conversations in my home. Like Mindy, I'm actually 4 years out of 2 rounds of Journey of Hope. And so this has definitely been a lot of, yeah, my own personal transformation was leading up to this invitation. I remember I was talking, I'm a mom, and I was talking to my 12-year-old and was wanting to be like, hey, I'm thinking of going here. And her response was like, but mom, they're shooting people. And I had a conversation with saying, yeah, and if we don't stand up to that, if we don't speak out, what will they do? She's like, oh, keep shooting people. So um, yeah, there was some sobering conversations, as Mindy said, kind of as the training was definitely doing our hosts were doing everything. And certainly when we got on the ground, we saw all the ways that they were making sure that they would be good hosts and keep us as safe as possible and be monitoring things on the ground. But there were moments of saying this is an unknown situation. And I think there was just, yeah, it was unfolding. Things were unprecedented
Mhm.
to history. And yet the call that came through harkened back. They named Martin Luther King Jr.'s call to clergy to stand in Selma. And so there was kind of this sense that history, when it's happening, you don't know what the outcome is going to be like. But I think for me and for many of us, we were like, this is an opportunity. We've been leading up to this moment. My husband, who is also a Peace Fellow through Global Immersion, he's like, this is a clear yes. Even, this is what we've been leading up towards as far as our next step of transformation and then bringing things back to Spokane. So it was uncertain for sure. And the language was kind of surprising when we're getting on the ground and the people of Minneapolis were saying, we are an occupied city. And so we're kind of picking up on this language. And yeah, so we entered into a city that had been in the trenches already since early December. We had other Global Immersion Peace Fellows who are on the ground in Minneapolis, and we were hearing stories of the people groups, the vulnerables that they had worked with, saying, we've had 20 of our own taken. That's another language. They're saying they're taken or kidnapped. And so we before and kind of during our preparation to go, we're hearing from people that we are close with on the front lines who were scrambling, who were using their neighborhood networks, and we're exhausted, and we're inviting others to come in to bear witness and to maybe hold their arms up a little bit in their own exhaustion.
Yeah, well, yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I do want to pause just a minute on the, like, it took a lot of courage for you all to show up because even we've had similar conversations with our kids where we've said we're going to go do this march, and they're like, there's violence. Is ICE going to be there? Are they going to hurt people? And just kind of had these sobering conversations about what that looks like. And before we kind of get into what you actually saw on the ground, I don't know, Jen, you haven't shared it. I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but what did you have feelings before you got on the plane? You know, like when you heard the invitation, what was what was your internal response?
Yeah, I am in a newly unique situation in that my mom, uh, on Christmas Day, moved up here to Seattle with me. So, for the first time in a very long time, maybe in my adult life, my yes had contingencies on it of, okay, how is my elderly mom going to be if I get arrested, if I get hurt in some way? What does that look like? And it gave me a pause. And then on the Zoom call, when they're like, "Yeah, we recommend bringing a respirator," and all of us are Googling, "Where do I find a respirator?"
Yeah.
And can I put it in my carry-on? And all of those things as new. Um, I think before my mom moved up here, um, and it was just me making decisions about my own safety kind of thing. Um, that was a different calculation than, okay, what happens to my 85-year-old mother if something happens to me?
Right.
Um, and what does that look like? We'll probably get to it, but one of the, I think it was Thursday night. Yeah, it was Thursday night. Um, we as a group, as a cohort, had a discussion around the risks, not only of being there, but of what this movement is. And the idea that there's a decent chance that we will be, part of our role is to absorb some violence. And knowing that, how can we be strategic in what that looks like and not run headfirst willy-nilly into any opportunity, but like where does my arrest make the most sense?
Hmm.
Where does my potential pain make the most sense? And that, as a middle class, suburban white American, is not calculations that I've had to make before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And what,
yeah.
good.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that is just talking with my family. It was, this level of discomfort and feeling my own vulnerability as we're preparing to go. I recognize that, just as Jen said, as a white middle class educated woman, this is not something I've had to actually carry in my body,
Hmm.
in a way that my privilege has allowed. And so our Black and brown kin have had to carry that daily sense of their vulnerability and what that feels like actually in their body for generations. And so I think for me it was even an opportunity in my own like actual physical education and transformation to, even for a few days, experience a tiny taste of that. And that felt really important to me because, again, it's not something that my everyday life demands of me, and I can just kind of tap out of that when I want to, and I feel the discrepancy and inequity of that.
Mm-hmm. I would just add, come Tuesday afternoon, we were supposed to fly Wednesday. I had a real sense of fear and anxiety, to the point where I had friends that were connected, that were hearing things, that were saying like, they're going to shut down the airport. You might not get home. It's 23 below zero. I mean, there was just a lot of things that were like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be really hard. I mean, this is gonna be really scary. And um, but as I was really feeling torn with like both decisions, um, I too have a partner that was very much like, you're going, like this is your yes, this is why you've been trained up. And so I had incredible support at home. And was also feeling like, I think saying no to this is going to feel worse than saying
Mhm.
yes. It felt so important and clear. But I would say this was a specific call for me at my time in my formation that I could say yes to. It doesn't mean everybody needed to say yes. I think for this particular group that I trusted so much that we've all been really equipped and we're knowledgeable and we had some good strategies on how we were all going to do this together. It felt like, but I agree with Lynn, the feeling of fear, uncertainty, what if I get hurt? What will happen to my kids? What if I get stuck? I mean, all of those things really was like, oh, this is how so many of our neighbors feel every single day. And what an experience for us to hold that and feel that in our bodies. It was really powerful.
Yeah, well, and like it seems like a big step, I think, for the Minneapolis group and everybody that's kind of gone there. And I think even I've even felt this in some of the little things that we've done here is like going from like not having any actual like skin in the game, no bodily participation, just, arguing about it on Twitter and doom scrolling and, like talking to friends about how bad everything is to like actually putting your body in a place where there's some vulnerability. Like that's a big step that it feels like we may need to make more in the future. And so, yeah, you all are like kind of leading the way with that and helping us. And I think, but we're all kind of feeling, and I will say also, like, I know for me, again, even just doing this little march, very safe, very peaceful, and not in Minneapolis, it was like, all right, we got out and did something, and it felt so much better to like go and overcome the little bit of trepidation and talk through the things with the kids, than to like sit it out because we're afraid.
Yeah.
So you guys got to, so everybody got on the plane, you show up, and yeah, how do they train you? Like, what's training look like when you're stepping into that kind of chaos?
I'll just start primarily because there was a moment on the plane too that I think all of us felt a little concerned. There was we had gotten word that there was ICE agents in the airport and that they were checking phones. And so we were told immediately to turn off our Face ID, or any sort of way that, an ICE agent could, put the phone right to your face and get into your phone because they could use that against you. We were asked to delete any messages on there, whether they were secure or unsecure around any of our plans or anything that we had done. So that was like, okay. I mean, so we were even just kind of quietly joking, like, what are we going to say to any agent that might come up to us on why are you visiting Minneapolis? So I think that felt like right as we got there, we were feeling the tension that is very palpable
Mhm.
in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Just this uncertainty of like things could happen at any point and you need to be prepared. Um, and so a lot of the things that we were trained up on was just primarily like, yeah, how we should have our phone settings. We should have our passport with us, stay in a group, have a buddy, all of those things. So right as we landed, I think I felt that right away. Again, we didn't run into any action in the airport, but it did feel like we already were feeling like this, hold your breath, this could be right as we hit the ground, we could feel it in the city. So what we did that first night was that we traveled to an Airbnb that was just a few houses down from another Peace Fellow that we met that's working with the Native population. He and his brother, who is also a Peace Fellow that's working with another immigrant population, both were able to join us that night. Uh, Along with a spiritual director that we have become close to through our connections with Global Immersion. And so we were all able to eat local food, to come together, to celebrate, but also to really surround these two brothers that have been working on the ground. And they were able to really let down and share some stories of, again, at least 10 families that they know that have been taken, the effects that it's had on the neighborhood, the toll that it's taken financially, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I mean, it was just the constant threat of what's happening on the ground. And they were able to really grieve, I think, and sit with us because I think they were so overwhelmed that this many had shown up, and that they felt known by us. In some capacity because we've all been, sort of in these cohorts orbiting each other along the way. So that was our first evening. And then the spiritual director was able to really let us process and grieve. And Jen mentioned this before, but she was really trying to get us to think really um, thoughtfully around why are we here, and what is our invitation. And she was good to also name some things to say that this is not a new American story. This is a long American story, that we need to be in reality of what that means. And if these patterns of behavior and racism and oppression and authoritarian regime continue to happen in our country, it's just a symptom of a bigger problem, which is really our own transformation. So she was able to move us toward what is it to be grounded in your belovedness as a child of God, breathing in that, accepting that, and what is it then to see the other as a child of God? So she invited us to imagine, she invited us to think about our anger and our hate in that time as well. And then sort of close our eyes and picture that person in front of us, like the person that we would really love to, vent our rage on. And so as we have that image in our head, she said, I'd really like you to take a moment right now and wonder about their story.
Mm.
Where did they come from? What happened to them? What was their family situation like? What may have they been raised in? What sort of pain have they encountered? And then she said, I need to invite you all to want their good. Because if we can become a people that want their good, we will be transformed. Because if we don't want their good, if we want them to suffer and we only focus hate on them, then we become just like them. So that was how sort of our time Wednesday night began.
Man, that's so good. They're the enemy love. I mean, that's like so deeply Christian. You know what I mean? Like that is what it means to be a follower of Jesus, is to be a person who is learning and training how to have compassion, empathy, even for the people that are persecuting you, and or persecuting your neighbors or persecuting your friends or doing this like great evil. Man, so was that Oshita, by the way? That sounds like Oshita.
No.
Nina,
No.
it was Nina
Nina
Barnes. Yeah.
Oh,
Barnes.
Nina Barnes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think it really convicted me because so much of what Minneapolis and St. Paul is crying out for is compassion from the ICE
Yeah.
agents. Just be
Right.
compassionate. Like these are human beings. Treat them with compassion. And she reminded us we too have to have compassion on them.
Yeah.
And so that's the deeper work for all
Yeah.
of us.
Absolutely. It's powerful
Yeah, I
stuff.
would say in that, like Nina, who's a Black woman, was saying all of this in a group of predominantly white people. The three of us, four of us on this call are white, who are saying, what does it look like for us to put skin in the game? What does our tiny bits of transformation look like? She was saying, I have to believe in you, white people of faith. I have to believe in your transformation because my life depends on it. And so just when you say, Chris, of like, yeah, not everyone is it their call or opportunity to go to Minneapolis, nor should we all go to Minneapolis. But just that front lines for all of us is within us. Like that is what enemy love begins here. And so what does that look like? It's uncomfortable. And there's so many calls towards judgment of others and all these things, but it's not about changing our enemy. It's actually about us being so rooted in our own belovedness, and that we can actually believe in that for our enemy. And so that's the front lines that you don't have to go to Minneapolis to contend with. And it's a long,
Absolutely.
hard journey, and we are only steps along the road, each of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I throughout the weekend, Nina's conversation really stuck with me in ways of, man, I finally just got on the right side of thinking about things. I finally am contending for people. And if I create room and space to love ICE agents, it feels disloyal. It feels like betrayal, and wrestling like, okay, loving them doesn't mean accepting the harm they're doing.
Mhm.
Loving them means recognizing the harm they're doing is to themselves as well, and wanting what's best for them also. Like you cannot live in a space of dehumanizing other people and be okay. Like that wrecks your soul. and wanting their souls to be complete also. But it was a wrestling, and it was a wrestling of like to scrape out the performative white liberal, I'm doing the right thing, from my motivations to like their belovedness is as important as my belovedness and my migrant neighbors' belovedness. That recognizing I can't write them off, I can't dehumanize them, I can wish for justice, but not in a Schadenfreude way. Like I
Hmm.
can not in a way where I'm gleeful about their downfall. I have to want for them to be redeemed also, because if not, if we just crush them the way we did in every other time, we just push them underground till it's safe for those things to come out again. Like
Hmm.
the only way out of this is if we're all transformed, not just make people safe. Now, I will settle for making people safe in the short term, but
Yeah.
the goal is transformation of all of us, not just wanting people to uh, be destroyed, because that's the same value that they're reflecting to us.
Can
And this, I think, back to like actually the training and the being in Minneapolis and the strategic planning that we were invited into reminds me of what some of us, I think, I don't know if everyone heard Ben McBride speak, but just his phrase of being soft on people, but hard on systems. And so our being there was actually a strategic, how do we resist and actually try to put cracks into the system that is allowing this to happen, that is mechanizing the dehumanization of our kin. And so that was, I think, a good distinction of loving our enemy, but still being tough on system and fighting for justice in a strategic way. And I think that's what we learned a lot about on Thursday.
Yeah, man, such good stuff. I want to ask, this might be kind of a hard question, and it might take me a minute to kind of spit it out. But so like I feel like we all have our own sort of algorithms, and we're seeing what we're seeing from on the ground in different places, and people see different things. And I guess one of the things that I feel like I'm hearing from people that are in different echo chambers than me is that there is like so much violence and agitation on the part of the resistance that that like this needs to be quashed and people need to submit to authority. And I'm sure that there's rowdy people around. But I guess my question is like with the clergy group, I can 100% believe this is what we're after. We are trying to learn how to love our enemy, how to bring that sort of transformation to the whole community. Did you find, like, is that our witness as clergy to the larger movement? Did you find people in the larger movement are in similar spaces? Like, could you share a little bit about, I know this is down, like, we're kind of skipping ahead in the timeline here a little bit, but could you share a little bit about what you're seeing on the ground there? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I would say to people who believe that the resistance is violent, they should check the dates on their videos, because it's not. I mean, it
Mm,
is. And we had a conversation about it also, I think Friday night after we had been out, is that this movement has been incredibly strategic in being nonviolent, because there
mhm,
seems to be an awareness that as soon as there's any excuse to bring in Insurrection Act, militarized force against us, it'll happen.
mhm,
But very, very much the vibe, the ethos is hyper local organization, small groups of people. There's definitely witness, and it's definitely irritating because they honk horns, they blow whistles, but it's not violence. I haven't seen, and again, algorithms, but I haven't seen any videos of uh, protesters initiating anything um, other than being a nuisance and getting in the way.
yeah.
Yeah, I think for the most part, we're seeing neighbors looking out for neighbors. And that means disrupting what ICE is wanting to do. So we need to be clear on it is disruptive because the alternative is continuing to agree with what the authority says is the right way. So it is certainly disruptive. It is all of us having, especially white people, breaking agreements with saying that, oh, because this is coming from top-down authority or, those types of things, then they're in everyone's best interest, because for the white narrative, that generally is the case. And so saying, I'm going to actually disrupt this. So it is irritating. It is actually trying to disrupt what they are trying to do, but completely in a non-violent way. And so I think to couple resistance and disruption with violence and, breaking any kind of law is the false coupling. It's resistance, it's lawful. It is not violent. It is not unlawful.
Mm-hmm. I agree with all that. I would say the march in and of itself, when we were out there with, I don't know what they say, 50,000 people, the energy, Chris, was like so positive. Like, there was no like angry rhetoric. I mean, there was like ice out. I mean, definitely like we want this to stop. But the people, I mean, people are handing us water bottles and granola bars and making sure we had hand warmers. I mean, it was all just, the music was upbeat. By the time we actually moved into the Target Center, it was just, yeah, people waving signs, and they had a DJ that was playing music, people were dancing. So it was very much like part of the strategy is we're going to keep shining our light really bright to overcome this darkness, because this is not who we say we want to be about, and we don't value these things. We were invited to protest and sing at Target, because Target is, been sort of complicit. They haven't stood up and said this is wrong, and it's clear that ICE agents have been organizing in their parking lots and taking people from their parking lots, and also taking people off, working at Target. And so Target hasn't said anything. And so Minnesotans are like, we love Target. We love everything that you stand for. You're focused on family and our core values and being a good neighbor. Just be who you say you are. It wasn't this vitriol and anger and we hate you. It's just like, please help us. We're trying to help our neighbors in the ways that you have helped us raise our kids and clothe our kids and all these things. So the ways in even which they're framing the language of the approach and the disruption is based on who do we want to be as people, and how do we think about our humanity and helping others. And so that was really refreshing to me. So now I'm honest, like I'm sure there are people that are outside of the organized peaceful protesters that can, yes, get snapped on a phone that look like, they're doing all these violent things, but that is not how we felt it at all. I mean, there was this deep love for their cities and taking care of each other. I mean, more so than, I don't even know that we've even experienced in Spokane. Like, do we love our city as much as Minneapolis and St. Paul love their city? And they're really proud of the organizing they've done throughout history. I mean, part of the reason they're being targeted is because they're known for being really well, doing these types of things really well. And ICE is trying to break that. And so it's important for your listeners to know that, in Chicago, when they released ICE, back last spring, they said they released about 300 agents. Well, there's close to 3,000 in Minneapolis. And so this is very, very strategic. And they are trying to come in to sort of test the waters, in hopes that they will bow down and say, okay, we'll just let you take all of our friends that are, maybe don't have white skin color. And so that part of the resistance. And I think I appreciate the, governor just saying, we're going to do this well, and we're going to do this with decency, and we're going to outlove this, and that was the feeling that we experienced.
And I think I want to say too, just that it wasn't just the Minneapolis faith organizers that are like setting this moral tone. It is Minneapolis and the neighbors that may or may not identify as people of faith, but they are the ones setting this tone. And we, as the clergy, kind of carry the symbol of that moral integrity and moral witness. But they were the ones leading us into that moral witness, I think, in a lot of ways. And so I think it was humbling to say that this is not being led by the church from a higher moral ground. This is a community and a city that knows what love of neighbor looks like. And so we, people of faith, who that is part of our faith tradition, have a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And it's just helpful to have people who were there who can kind of tell us what you actually saw there, because again, we get fed stuff and there's rage machines in multiple different directions. And so it's helpful to just to be like, no, that's not what this is, that's not what's going on there.
And I want to say that the things that they're concerned with are literally like their neighbor, like where we were staying in the Airbnb. We were informed that there were neighbors that had had ICE come pound on their door in early December and had not left their house since.
Mhm.
So a lot of this is not symbolic resistance. This is, how do we care for this family that does not feel safe going to work, school, or the grocery store? How do we help pay their rent? So a lot of the concern and the burden that people are carrying are not, how do we take down the man? It's, how do we care for this family so that they get medical needs met if they need it? And so it's really down to these details, and it's an unsustainable need of rent, food, education, work. And so that's actually what a lot of the resistance is just, how do we meet needs?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a personalized siege, like where everybody's got to figure out a way to like survive without leaving the house and putting themselves in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just going back in the timeline. So what did they in the training? You're getting ready to go out there and protest and go to Target and you guys were on the street also. What, like, were there ways that they were saying engage with ICE this way, don't engage this way, stay this far away from them? Here's how you use your camera. These are your rights. Could you kind of give us a little breakdown for those of us who may find ourselves in similar situations in the coming weeks or months? I need to just start calling names out. Sorry, everybody's too nice to each other. They don't want to interrupt.
Well, let me give you an overview of Thursday. Yeah, so Thursday was the day of clergy training. So we were invited into a really big church downtown. They were expecting 200 clergy to take the call, and there was over 1,000. They actually had to start turning people away. So a few from our group didn't even get in to the training because they were at capacity in terms of just space and food and all the things that they wanted to teach us. So we were brought into this big sanctuary, and then we were taught a lot of protest songs from the beginning. And then there was just a variety of speakers from different organizations that had been on the ground that were sort of testifying to what was happening. But again, everything was pretty, there was no schedule printed. There were a lot of things that we didn't know what was coming next. The one thing that our group did do, they were like, if you're interested in getting on a bus and going into the neighborhoods, you have to pick up a ticket. And so our group picked up enough tickets for all of us to do that. But before we even knew it, they said, hey, if you want to go get on a bus and go into the neighborhood, you go into this room. So about half of us went and did that. And it was about a 5-minute training. Everyone was given a whistle. Everybody was given a phone number and then asked to write it on inside of your forearm with Sharpie and then cover it up. And we were told, if you can take your passport, take your passport. And then if you see an ICE agent, take 2 big steps back and turn your camera on. And they really said, this works. I think what's tricky about what you're seeing in your news feeds is you're seeing what happens when it doesn't always work and it does get violent. But a lot of times they were telling us, if they see clergy walking around and they see people with whistles, they will go the other direction. And so that was really powerful to feel like, oh, we could have an influence here.
It was to bear witness,
yep,
to document, and to make noise.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think it's good to point out, especially depending on what people's news feeds are, the people that ICE are after, we are hearing, is basically anyone who's not white has been terrorized by ICE. So these are citizens. Many of the people that are being detained have actually followed all of the rules. And so I think there isn't always even clarity about that, mm-hmm. that it's not like we're preventing ICE from getting, these hardened criminals that have snuck through the border and are wreaking havoc in these neighborhoods. These are just wanting to alert people who've been here for many, many years, following all the rules, that ICE could come and cause terror to them. Mm-hmm. So that's what the making noise is about, is just alerting when there's ICE presence, and then documenting. It's a constitutional right. They said if they kind of start, if ICE is there and you start doing this and they start to notice you, they say take 3 very big steps backwards so that you aren't actually interfering, but you are documenting.
Mhm.
So you're de-escalating immediately, just physically stepping back, but not stopping doing the
Right.
things that you're there to do, which is to document, make noise, video. Mindy, can you share the phone number on your arm? What are we doing with that? What's that for?
Yeah, so that was their one phone number to legal aid if for any reason any of us were captured or taken. We also had a
For
pretty
bail, right? Yeah. Or for help or for, sorry, go
for
ahead. Go
help.
ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did all have a buddy. So they didn't let any, I mean, it was very much we had a pod within our own group, but then as we went into the neighborhood, you had to stay with your buddy the entire time. So they were very strategic that you do not do any of this alone. If you had, any sort of disruption with ICE, then you have your buddy take your phone or even your passport and stay with you. It's like, so that was all very strategic as they were prepping us on that. And then as we moved into, as the bus stop, they just said, we want you to bear witness and walk around the neighborhood. And if you see small shops that are run by immigrants, they please go and please spend money there and say hello, bring peace. And so we did all have the opportunity to do that. There was one taco shop that we went into, the open sign was on, but the door was locked. Because it really had just been 2 blocks over that there had been a really big kerfuffle just the day before, and many were taken. So there was very high anxiety, but we had our stoles on and we just said, hola, pastora, and they let us in, and then they locked the door behind us. And we just sort of surrounded this couple and their daughter who was working there and just said, how are you? And they said, it's so awful. I mean, they're just nervous, exhausted, scared, but then so happy to serve us, right? Like, so there was just like, oh, we have people here that want to buy money, that they're not threatening us, that it's peaceful. So just the power of what it was to get to know people on the ground was just incredible. And, you all went into different shops than I did, so you can share other things you saw that day.
So we're getting into Saturday now, right? So this is what you guys get out on the
Well,
street, or
this
this
was
is still Friday
Thursday.
night?
No,
Or
this
is
is
still
Thursday.
Thursday.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's
Yeah,
Thursday,
it's
Friday,
okay.
not Friday, Saturday.
Thursday.
This is
We
Thursday.
got there Wednesday
Okay.
night, and then we did this
Wednesday
clergy
night.
training Thursday. And part of the training was to go out into this one specific neighborhood. Yep.
Okay, so this is still part of the training to go out in the nearby neighborhood, kind of see what it's like on the ground, feel the negative 20 degrees, and remember to bring your jacket next time or whatever. Yeah, what else? So, yeah, Lynn or Jen, did you see any meaningful experiences in that little time?
Jen and I were buddies, so we had a similar experience. So Jen, why don't you share anything that?
Well, we walked around and I had a personal point of conviction as we were walking by the police precinct of uh, not wanting to pray for the police precinct and wanting, uh, like, having some pretty strong resistance to like what their role was and what, like, yeah. And so I couldn't walk by and I said, okay, then we got to pray. And we
Mhm.
prayed for both for justice and for police to stand in the way of injustice, but also for the transformation and the blessing of police. But then as we kept walking, we walked through some neighborhood area and we found a little religious shop. We're not exactly sure what it was, but there were a lot of candles and icons and different things. And again, the door was locked. But when they saw the sign said open, and when they saw that we were trying to come in, they let us in, and we looked around and we bought some candles. And Lynn, did you also get some sage?
I did. I got some sage. Yeah.
And yeah, and then as we were walking through the neighborhood, we were just nodding and smiling at folks. We walked through like more sort of houses area and saw a man who was out working with his car because it had gotten hit and run on the street, and just sort of tried to encourage him and see if he needed any help. Um, And it's interesting because it was just walking in a neighborhood and smiling at people and trying to be a peaceful presence. And when we got back into our bus, um, Dan, the Buddhist priest who was our bus leader, was his name Dan? I feel like it was Dan. Ben. Yes, I knew it was a sounding name. Asked if anyone witnessed anything, and almost all of us didn't. And one set of people who were out saw ICE agents roll up on a pregnant woman. 12 agents get out and they witnessed. And when they saw them witnessing, the agents quickly got back in their cars and moved on, like in a couple minutes. So most of us didn't see anything. And one group deterred people. And Ben said most of activism is waiting around and not knowing if anything's going to happen or if you're going to do anything, and being trained for if something happens, you're prepared for it. But a lot of it is waiting around. And so that was a lot of what we experienced.
We got trained and waiting around. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we got trained and waiting around.
Yep.
All right, and then so what's
then
next?
After the bus experience, we went back and then they had a variety of workshops for us. And so we each split up and went to different workshops around different things. So one of the gals in our group went to bystander training. They also now have a term called upstander training, like in terms of what does it mean to like be an observer, but also what is it to stand up for somebody else. So there were, I was in I got, which is ironic because I'm not really a musical person at all, but I was in a workshop around sit-ins and then also protesting with song. But a lot of what they did at the beginning was just talking about how you think about leadership as you have one leader at the top and then all these people beneath that person. And they said, that's really not it. This is a regime, right? And it's an authoritarian regime and it's held up by these pillars. And one of the main pillars that is holding it up is the corporations. And so if we can knock down one of those pillars, that again, government officials is one of them, the police is one of them, faith leaders are another one. So there's different ways that you can think about the ways in which we're holding up the regime. But what they're looking at right now is saying if we can get some of these corporations to stop funding this government, we're going to move forward. I mean, they're going to respond. And so that's why Target was a key action in terms of like getting Target's attention because it's based right there in Minneapolis, as is Delta. So Delta is a hub right there at the airport, and we're trying to work on what does it look like to do a boycott of Delta because they have flown so many ICE agents with detainees on their planes. And so that's a little bit of the work. And then I learned like what it looks like to actually do a protest in the lobby of a Target. And it requires there's like 10 different roles that people play. It's all very thought out. And that was really just fascinating. So you have somebody at the door, you have somebody check the building the night before, you have people there to de-escalate if anybody starts to anti-protest. You have people designated to talk to security if they come upon the group. You have a song leader. You have specific speakers that are going to say specific things. And their messages have to be short and succinct. And, here's why we are here. Here is what we are asking for. And then, so it was all very organized. And then to be able to actually see all of those roles assigned and do that Friday morning before we started the march, it was really cool for the whole group to be a part of that and to see how it really played out. And then it was like, oh, we could do this at home. We have targets at home. So that felt like really tangible tools that we could take. So that was just my workshop, but the other two had great workshops too.
Yeah, I went to a workshop on hyper local organizing that sort of gave voice to why the resistance in Minnesota is so successful. That their organization model is basically walk outside your front door, look at all the houses you can see, and get to know your neighbor. And then get all your neighbors together. Invite everyone to a meeting, a group, where you can say, hey, here's what we're going to commit to do to take care of each other. start a signal chat where needs can be shared, mutual aid of like, hey, these particular vulnerable neighbors should not go to the grocery store alone. Who can go with them? This particular neighbor can't pick up their kids. Who can pick up their, that sharing those needs in a hyper local way, and then those hyper local ways network to other blocks. And they said a thing that I actually told Jer he needs to incorporate into his Jerisms, is that networks are nets that work. They create nets all around the city that shows where the gaps are. And if we don't have the resource in our block, maybe the next block over has the resource. Maybe, all of that. And so they utilize signal groups and things like that to communicate what the needs in this hyper local neighborhood is. And when you get hyper local neighborhoods all over the place, they can connect and resist in ways that you can't either in a top down structure or by yourself. It's like that in between of we are going to care for our neighbors, and then we're going to care for the next neighborhood over, and we're going to connect with all of these things. And so the really great hands-on seminar, and their biggest encouragement to us was they had in their neighborhood about a month that they saw the writing was on the wall to start organizing, and wish they could have had 6 months. And so what we can be doing now is beginning to get to know our neighbors and organizing into communication groups where we can keep tabs on each other.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good for all of us in other places to just think about what may become, whether it's this or something else, like those kind of networks can do a lot of different things.
Yeah. It's also good when there's not a crisis.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have the neighborhood block party, say there's no crisis, you can actually just have a barbecue, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
Did you go to a different one, Lynn?
Yeah, I did. So I'll say kind of talk on two. There was one that none of us went to, but it was also just even about like media and how to take hold of a story when it is being warped. So I thought that was pretty interesting because certainly we're all experiencing how the story is presented to us through algorithms and echo chambers. They also had one that just kind of touching on probably what has been more common news headlines is invitation for people alongside kind of some labor movement strategies to go and do a sit-in at the airport with the likelihood or possibility of being arrested. And so they actually did invite clergy who are interested in that to go do specific training for what that direct nonviolent action would look like. So that's what we're walking around the neighborhood is a little bit more certainly passive. They are coming to you and you're responding. This is a nonviolent direct action training. A couple of people with us went, and then I don't know that they were necessarily looking to be a volunteer to be arrested, but wanted the training. And then it turns out that the legal aid that was going to be provided for those pastors was only available to Minnesota residents. So of those who were seen in the news who did the Friday morning action at the Minneapolis airport were connected to this group that invited us, but again, kind of had a lot of that coverage and a lot of strategy. So it was very planned and strategic, and from a lot of even studies and what it looks like to do this historically. So that is the kind of the resulting was the news headlines of the pastors getting arrested while praying at the airport. So just kind of wanted to touch into that. Yeah. That piece that you had mentioned already. I went to a piece on movement chaplaincy. I'm a professional hospital chaplain, and so was really interested in what that same kind of skill set looks like for de-escalating when it's in kind of neighborhoods in the streets, whether it's at a protest, at a rally, or just among the neighborhood when people are exhausted, scared, elevated, and what it looks like to help ground people, to help see what the narrative is, help find the grief and the lament and channel it in a way that is not going to put risk to the movement itself, but actually help tend to those very human needs. My speaker didn't actually speak a lot to movement chaplaincy. She was telling her own personal story. She is a professor and a pastor, and she's indigenous to Minnesota, and yet had her own scare of being followed by ICE agents, not being sure what was happening at first, but then confirming that she indeed was being followed as a brown woman. And then her experience of calling a live signal chat of the neighborhood of people who their very purpose is, it's kind of like a police radio, is for people who are in the situation that they're being followed by ICE and don't know what to do, actually are activated so others to help and come and kind of bring their cars physically to help people find safety when they are being followed by ICE. And she had a very emotional story about this. And as a Native woman, they have a long history of women disappearing at the hands of authority. And so she just said that signal call, and she doesn't even know who it was that helped her, but that they saved her life. So that was her experience that she shared with us. And so again, like a lot of these trainings were just hearing more of these real stories that are happening to people throughout the community, and how that mutual aid and looking out for each other really is making a difference.
Yeah.
I will
Heavy
say one
stuff,
other,
exciting stuff. Yeah, go ahead, Mindy.
I'll say one other thing, Chris, just because it still kind of is rattling to us. But again, I mean, we were just asking the questions like, where would they take a Native woman, right? Like that's just so bizarre. And in the midst of hearing about so many people that have been taken, and then the conditions that they're in when they are taken, one of our Peace Fellow friends told us about one that had been taken, and they were only taken with the clothes on their back. They were given no soap, no toothbrush, and just sort of it felt like an animal warehouse that they were all shoved into. And then they were given a 2-minute phone call, but that was only because there were people in Minnesota that were putting money into his account, and that they were able to find him. They say too many times these people are being detained and ICE isn't even taking the time to get their names right. And so even finding the right one to connect a family member with has gotten incredibly hard. And we heard on the ground that they had just changed it again to say you only get a phone call if you have money in your account and if you have a retainer with a lawyer already set up. So you think about these poor people that are just trying to, make it through the day, now have to think about, I have to get a lawyer on retainer. So that was just devastating in terms of just the conditions and how they're being treated. But in the midst of hearing all these stories, we got an Amber Alert on all of our phones at the same time. If you've ever had an Amber Alert, it's like it's very loud on everybody's phone. And there was a 7-year-old blonde girl that had been abducted. And it was just like, there are people being abducted all over the place, but our system is moved if it's a 7-year-old blonde, blue-eyed little girl. And of course, we have nothing but hope that she was returned, but it just felt like the dissonance of living into that, of being on the ground, and then seeing how different that was. I don't know if you've all seen that Savannah Guthrie's mom has been abducted, which is just so bizarre, but also the attention. I'm still feeling the same, like there's so many people being abducted right now, but there are certain people that get all the press, all the attention, all the phone numbers, and all the financial support. And then you see the discrepancy with this population that just are being ignored, in so many ways. So that part was a huge part, I think, for my process, and just being there and then paying closer attention to where the money's going and where the support is going.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, I don't know, maybe you said this, but the person you're talking about who got detained was also like sent to Texas from Minneapolis, right?
Yes.
So like they
Yeah.
were also
Yeah.
far
An
away.
hour.
Yes.
in another state, and so no one knows where they are, and this is happening pretty constantly.
Mhm.
And I've been doing a lot of court accompaniment, and so I've been seeing a lot of court cases, and I can tell you a lot of people do not have lawyers.
Yeah.
That's a big task in the beginning stages of the court process, is judge saying, have you found a lawyer yet? I'm going to give you this long to find a lawyer, and this, and so people, I mean, I don't know. I don't have a lawyer on retainer. Most people don't just like have a lawyer all the time. So to feel like you have to have that just to potentially make a phone call to family to tell them where you are locked up in prison, like that's pretty horrifying.
Mhm.
Yeah,
All right. So, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say we can get to Friday, but Friday morning I woke up to news that in Spokane, a 10-year-old girl was taken from school after her father kind of was wrestling with what to do, and they had an asylum court date for 2027.
Wow.
So, this is just it is the backlogged system, and they're doing everything right. She was a little girl in school. I have a 10-year-old fourth grader, exactly the same age. And so just, yeah, we had kind of these moments from home of just discrepancy, and also just the limited resources that people are so trapped inside, that are really impossibilities. There's people who are fleeing their homes and being housed elsewhere, but still have to pay their rent because that's legally required for them to maintain legal status, but then are being hunted down as if they were here illegally, and breaking the rules. So yeah, just kind of the impossibilities of the situation are complex and multi-layered. But as a friend who went with us said to a number of girls when we got home, of just saying, no matter what you think about this complex idea of immigration, there's many ways to look at it. There's not a clear solution, but what's happening is very inhumane, and it is actually violating our own constitutional laws. And so that's not necessarily addressing the immigration complexity, but it is certainly crossing a line that I think anyone from the range of idea about immigration should take notice of.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to kind of keep us moving forward. So it's Friday or it's Thursday night. You've been through all this training. You've had a very intense day, and looking toward the next day when all the real stuff is starting. How are you feeling? Like, what's that? You get a nice, good, restful night's sleep, no stress, or how's that night?
I think for me, the combination was very hopeful from what I'd seen at the training and the way people were coming together, and also a decent amount of anxiety about the unknown for the next day. Knowing that I've marched in protest before, I've done these things, but we just spent a day hearing how all the boundaries and rules are off,
Mm.
that there is no guarantee that anyone's going to play the role that we've expected in the past.
Mhm.
And so, like, the anxiety of the unknown was very real there. But I actually slept pretty great because I didn't sleep great the night before, so I was pretty tired. So,
Wiped out. Yeah.
win for that.
Yeah, and I'd say Friday morning, Thursday night, we were starting to do some reflections and sharing what we learned at the different workshops, and had some of our local friends come by again, and still get to come by then, and then had again some delicious immigrant food, trying to just be a little part of that solution for the neighborhood, and helping really good immigrant chefs stay afloat a little bit. It was delicious. And then Friday morning, I'd say we took it pretty easy Friday morning, just kind of giving ourselves space to talk a little bit more and kind of get what we need. So there was some wisdom in that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Friday morning, take it a little bit easy, and then there's like a clergy march. Or did any of you, Mindy, you did the Target one?
Everybody decided to do the Target. I was like, you guys
Okay.
got to see this. So we met at the Target right around 1:30, and the march started at 2, but they were like, you're going to be able to join the march. Just come and do it. So we all gathered in the Target and came in singing protest songs. It really went off, right on schedule. Everybody did their parts really, really well. We were able to observe that and bear witness to that. There was one security guard that came down the escalator and she was kind of waving her hand at us, but she was quickly met by some others that just said, "Hey, we're just here to do this, this, and this." And so that was fun. I mean, not fun. It was an experience of like, we felt like we were a part of something and learning how to do something like this. But then everybody moved outside and kind of sang even more. And then we headed toward the march and really were able just to kind of meet up right at the beginning of the march. And then we got word a couple hours later that Target actually closed. Now, a lot of the city had closed down for the march that day, but we took it upon ourselves to give ourselves credit for shutting that Target down that day. We thought that was definitely because we had sang so well. But
Oh, it's
that
because of the
still felt
singing.
like
Okay.
we felt like it was a win. Like, oh, they shut down.
Yeah.
So again, we just joined the march at that point, and it didn't feel as cold on Friday. I think it's just because the wind was not as bad, and we had layered up so well. So on Thursday at the training, we really weren't thinking about a lot of time outside, but we probably should have layered up more on Thursday than we did. So come Friday, we all looked like we were going on a ski trip, and completely layered up, and it felt doable because the wind was not as bad. So that felt like God's blessing to us. And
I think the warmth of 50,000 other bodies
yes,
helped bring the temperature up a little bit.
So we really were just following this kind of massive open bed truck, and they had speakers on there and microphones. And there was music being played throughout. And so they would lead us and we would chant back, or they would, share a little bit. And then they really just ushered us right to the Target Center. And then we all went in there. And there was a little bit of a delay. They were waiting for everybody from outside to get in. So that took a little bit longer. But again, the feeling and the vibe in there was really, really positive. They had music playing, and it was warm. There was a place to go to the bathroom. I mean, all the things were like, oh, this is this is really nice compared to what we'd been enduring. And then they just had a nice array of people that showed up in terms of speakers. So one of the most moving parts, I think, for all of us was there was a Native man that stood up and led us in their Native national anthem in his native tongue, and just stood proudly and sang, and everybody stood up. And it was just this moment of really honoring, the Native population that have been in Minneapolis for generations, long before us. So that felt so good and right to have it start with that anthem. And then we had just a huge variety of, there was a Baptist, there was a UCC person, there was a Islam man, there was all of these different varieties of and backgrounds of faith represented, and just saying this is what we want and this is what we're asking for. So again, not a lot of anger. There was not vitriol. There was, we want ICE out and we want our city back, and we're going to do this as well as we can. So the messaging up front was really great. So, but
it was clear, consistent messaging. And
yes.
This was many groups. You had labor, you had all the different immigration groups, you had different versions of faith groups and collectives there. And it was really clear that they had like clear messaging. They were on the same page. Even within our faith group that called us here, they're like, we have to set aside theological difference. And we had to sign going in that we were okay with that and that we were going to be there as a shared purpose. And then that thing we experienced when we answered the call seems to be just a broader part of a broader narrative of we just need to be in this together. And there was clear messaging, and there wasn't vying for the angles of what this should be about. And I forget the other thing I was going to say, but I think it just was impressive. Just that it was so many voices together with one kind of clear message.
So at that point, I think we left around 5 or 5:30, and then we had our van pick us up, which was really, really kind. And then we went back and ate together again. We got word from a Connection Spokane local paper that wanted to do an interview. I got nominated to be the voice for that particular press situation that night. And so over dinner, I was like, okay, what are we saying? Like, because now we have this group. We had learned that day that there was a prayer vigil in Spokane and they had prayed for each of us by name. So we were feeling like, oh, we have kind of, this is, there's a lot of pride in our hometown that Spokane was represented in Minneapolis. And so that, I think, turned us all on to like, oh, we may have people that want to talk to us when we get back. And so, I took that call that night, and then just did a brief interview, but really so much support was coming to us from our homes, and our networks and our communities of faith. The amount of prayers we were given. I mean, all of that felt like it gave us more strength, even in those moments of uncertainty and anxiety. That was such a huge gift. And then Friday night and more into Saturday, we started really saying, okay, let's just, what did we learn? How do we put it all together? How do we think about going back home? And so all of that was sort of, Jer in his sweet spot, just really thinking about strategy, communication, who else needs to be at the table? How do we get ready? How do we prepare? How do we help our neighbors in need? Who else need all the things that he can do really, really well. So we had a good time, doing that. As we were piling into the van to go to the airport, we had heard about Alex Pretti, and I think that's where the devastation came right back to us. That we even had a person in our group who was from Minneapolis, and her older sister knew Alex well. So that the reality of what that meant, knowing that we had just been out in the streets for all of us. But then by the time we were getting on the airplane, in our clergy chat from the larger organization, the weather was really bad that day in the south and the east, and so a lot of flights were canceled. And there was an all calls to any clergy that could stay back to please stay, because they knew they were going to have to protest again the next day and the next day and the next day. I was describing this whole thing to my husband, and he likened it to like, it's like if there's this massive forest fire and they start calling in more fighters to come from different cities, to just come and help with the flames. And I think that it just resonated with us so bad of like, oh, we're here to try and help a little bit, but then we all had to still return, but the fire's still blazing, and so, but at least in the groups that I'm in on these signal chats are very much like, how do we get back? How do we help? Or here's what's now happening in my city. And so these hyper local networks are so important, but I would even say these larger networks that we are now a part of, we now have a place to go to say, as it starts to come to our city, we have resources, and this connection with people that are like, okay, remember this training, remember this, how can we help? Hop on a call, we can get you more information. So that feels like a huge bonus, and a takeaway. They really wanted to equip us to be ready for when it comes back home.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, as we've come back, and so many people, like, if they heard our name, that we were one of the part that got to go be part of the march. A lot of people are like, oh, tell us how we can do more. We're so proud of you or whatever. I think it's so much that this was not us going and doing the thing and we've checked the box. This was Friday did feel so positive, and it felt amazing to kind of see the headlines that, pastors had been arrested, and that was kind of showing this moral line of witness and solidarity. And we had our very successful singing at the Target that we closed the Target for the rest of that day. And then in the 50,000 person march, like, that was great, but it was very much like, as we anticipated that, like, this was such a powerful showing, that we anticipated that, what is this backlash going to be like? What is going to be the next move? And so then, it was devastating and sobering, for after the good feel from the rally, just to see that there was someone's life that was taken, who was standing in resistance, not far from where we had been the day before. And so I think this is very much, as we're coming home and people are asking what to do and sharing the stories, like, this is this is continuing the process. And how do we even take this, micro transformation few days that we had and spread the word and have it be continuing the story, and as the fire spreads, so to speak, how do we take what we've learned about the front lines of Minneapolis and bring it back home, and show that this is not 9 or 11 or even 1,000 clergy's job or success, but that this is us being catalysts for bringing this home for 1,000 more. I think there was, statistics are boring, but one that stuck with me was that in order to have successful resistance against an authoritarian regime, it takes 3.5% of the population over 10 years of sustained resistance. And so for us who are in Spokane, that means 8,500 to 9,000 people being connected and having a sustained resistance of this collective, hyper-local neighborhood networking for the next 10 years. And so I'm like, what does that mean for my girls as they grow up? What does that look like? And what does that transformation look like and require of us for, years ahead, and not just this, I did this thing.
Right. Right. Jen, takeaways from the day or things that you want to share from the march?
Yeah, I think piggybacking on what Lynn was just saying, I think it was really easy. My flight left earlier than theirs, so I didn't find out about Alex Pretti until I landed. But really easy to get on the plane thinking, I did the thing, I did a thing, great. But it was very sobering to learn about these new muscles I need to be building, that it's not 3.5% coming out on a Saturday to a No Kings March or 3.5% marching in Minneapolis, but it's 3.5% over 10 years of sustained resistance, sustained economic pressure, sustained all of those things. Also, numbers, because I like numbers. One of the things they shared with us that is that authoritarian regimes, which is what we are moving very quickly towards, are naturally ended about 7% of the time. When civil resistance and civil disobedience is involved, that number jumps to 50% ish. I think it's 51. I just looked at notes. And when there's civil resistance and labor gets involved, it jumps to 83% success rate of the authoritarian regime ending. So it was really encouraging to me to see both Minneapolis do a general strike and to have there start to be calls for general strikes. And that some of the narrative is talking about, hey, here's what we can all be doing with our dollars. Here's where we can be replacing Target spending until Target decides to stop being complicit with this regime. Here are steps you can take to unsubscribe and unfollow and use the economic pillar to start knocking this down. Because just statistically, 83 sounds better than 50% to me. That if we can get this quicker. But I think one of my main takeaways was realizing these are muscles I need to be building. Like that it's not a one-off weekend. It's every day. How do I come about this? Loving my literal neighbors that live next to me, loving my far off neighbors who are in crisis right now. One of the folks, one of our local friends shared, like, we need a sustainable solution that Minneapolis can maintain, but right now Minneapolis can't maintain this. Right now, like, let's all start bailing water out of the boat to help Minneapolis, and then let's all work towards sustainable solutions on the ground. That the government's not going to save us from this one. No one is coming to say, let's create a new department to fix this. And so we have to take care of each other. We have to look out for our literal neighbors, our literal community, our literal city, and then also our whole country. Like, we can't be in this alone. We have to do this together.
Yeah, that's a good word. So what are the next steps for you all? You've kind of shared a little bit, but like what you come back, you've had a week or two to kind of get resettled. Like what are you thinking for the future in Jen, you're in Seattle, the other two of you are in Spokane, right? What's that look like for you guys?
Well, I'll just say what we've been working on in Spokane. We had, yeah, a real call last summer at a ministry conference that I put on here, to begin to mobilize in some really proactive ways. So there's a lot of pastors in Spokane that want to be involved and have no idea. I mean, talk about no muscle at all. Like, how do I even begin? And so we called ourselves the Coalition of the Willing. Like we don't know how to do these types of work, but we're willing. And so we started a monthly gathering. We call it now the Clergy Immigration Table. And so that's been average about 20 to 30 pastors a month that are coming, and we're meeting with community organizers who are like happy for us to finally have shown up. And they've been doing this work for a long time, but we just didn't know them and we hadn't overlapped with them. And so they always say we can only move as fast as the trust that we have in each other. So they've built it around how do we get to know each other really well. So even in our 2 hour time per month, it's really focused on relationships. What are our core values? And then what are the most urgent crises at the time? So we do have immigrant churches that have been hit hard here in Spokane. So we're trying to surround those populations the best we can. There are trainings. We've talked with immigration lawyers. So that's been a monthly thing that has started to build some really strong friendships. And before we left, we were invited by the pastor at one of the bigger Presbyterian churches downtown, and he's in connection with the Haitian pastor in our town, worried about what was going to happen to the Haitians come February 3rd, which is today, that they were going to lose their status completely, that they would be vulnerable for any sort of ICE movement in the city, that they could definitely be hunted and detained right away. They won't have any status at all. So January 4th, we said, what if we do a prayer vigil on February 1st and invite all of those that have been involved at the clergy immigration table. And the Haitians said they really would love to join us in that. And they just asked us to pray, but they also said, and we want to know you. So we decided, what if we pray and worship together for an hour? And then we invited some Haitian chefs that are connected at Feast World Kitchen here in Spokane. So because of our relationship with Ross and all of that, and the church having this massive, huge kitchen, over 600 people came on Sunday. And we were able to hear stories of what the Haitians are worried about, their fear, their uncertainty, their longing just to study and to make money so they can send it back home to their parents that are in 80% of Haiti is controlled by gangs right now. And so there was just this heart-wrenching stories that were told, but also like good time of worship, a really good sermon preached about Jesus being in a refugee family. I mean, the right messages were conveyed, and reminders to us about this God that we believe in is one that understands this plight, and also calls for us to be people of mercy and grace and love the neighbor, and focus on what does it really mean to be a good Samaritan, to get down in the ditch, and to help those that are lost and in need of care right now to survive. So, and then at the end, Jared was able to get up and say, now what are we going to do, folks? So there were 600 people there. And as of this morning, we were close to 275 that responded. There were
287 now.
287 because Jen put the software together behind the scenes for us. But they were invited to trainings to become friends with Feast World Kitchen, so families can start surrounding more and more immigrant and refugees in our city. There was just 6 or 7 give money. I mean, we raised a lot of money that night too. So there was just options of like how to get involved, how to be a part of the clergy immigration table. There was 3 or 4 trainings that they could sign up for. So it felt like I think Christians are really good about worshiping and praying, and that's awesome. But because of the relationships that we now have with community organizers, it's like you actually could do more than that. And so that felt like we were able to streamline both of, the best things that both groups know how to do. But we did it in a way that, because of these friendships and relationships that we've already built, it felt like, okay, we're moving towards something. And then we got the incredible news just last night that a federal judge stopped it. We don't know for how long. But the Haitians right now in our city, at least, are safe for today. So that felt like an incredible move. And the mayor just spoke out about why this is important in Spokane. We were on the front page of the local newspaper. I mean, so it did feel like, I think I can speak for Lynn, that we're just incredibly proud of Spokane right now, that there is this group that is stepping up, that is saying we have to stand up for our neighbor here too. So
yeah, I do think the timing and momentum, and again, the call for us to be in Minneapolis, they put this whole thing together in 6 days for us to show up, and it was incredible, the hospitality that we received. And then I think just the timing and unfortunately momentum following Alex Pretti's death as well at the hands of ICE, I think led to what was already cooking around the Haitian community in Spokane. I think people showed up who maybe wouldn't have showed up, or I was able to tell people who knew I went to Minneapolis saying, what can we do? And I said, come to this vigil, come to these things. These are the things happening. And so, I don't know if our mayor would have spoken up, but just the vigil was in the newspaper because we told them about it following an interview about Minneapolis. And so I think there's just kind of been this momentum and a connecting of dots that have already existed and were already happening, but the connecting of dots between faith leaders and community organizers and events that are happening and trainings that are available and have been available. I think there's just this beautiful thing that maybe feels like some of God's Spirit moving with circumstance. So,
yeah, love it. Jen, what's happening in Seattle?
Well, I am not the gatherer. I am not the dynamic front runner. So I am looking for who that person is. But I've been talking with different people that I've networked with, and actually talking with someone later this week who's connected with World Vision, of figuring out who is the person who has the relationships. And then my role, I have realized and am owning, is I'm a systems person. I want to be the little buddy of the people who are gathering to make the systems make sense and collect the data in safe ways. So as soon as I got home, I started researching. One of the things we learned there is Google is not in any way secure. So Google Forms, while super great and easy, and I'm very familiar with, there's AI scanning Google all the time, and anyone's sensitive information is readily available to anyone who wants it. So I did some research to find an encrypted way to do forms, an encrypted place to store forms. How do we navigate that? And then I called up Jer, knowing he had this thing coming up this past weekend, and said, hey, how are you collecting information? And can we try out this to see if it works? And to see how I can start integrating things. And so in Seattle, my role, I think, both in Seattle and as, backup Spokane, is looking at, as we start to gather who is doing the training, what are the resources, helping figure out how we can best get those to people in the safest ways. From what we learned in Minneapolis about vetted and unvetted communication sources and how they built things. That's really what I'm starting to figure out how to do. And like, I am reluctantly in the gathering of people right now and want to hand that off to someone else as soon as possible so I can just sit and make my little spreadsheets.
Amazing.
Amen.
And we talked about this before, Jen, when we were in Belfast, about how we need I'm like, I need the systems person at my church because I hate that stuff and need people to do it. Like, we all have different gifts, right? And we all bring different things to the table, and we need everybody. Like, we need you. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know if this is my thing, then well, what is your thing, and how can you contribute to the work and to the resistance in this case, or to the the communal, the beloved community, right? And so how can you help us take a step forward in a positive way to resist injustice and to find our way into the peace and goodness of God. Thank you three for joining. Any final word? I don't want to cut anybody off. I feel like we could talk for another hour probably, but I don't want to hold you all up that long. Any final word that you want to share about the experience or what's next or anything?
I would just echo what you said, Chris, that Jared talks about a lot and was talked about at the vigil in Spokane. And it's something that I have to question, is just that question of what is ours to do, and what's in my hand. That's the question that God poses back to Moses, saying, what's in your hand? And so there's things, I have aging parents in Spokane, so they're not, showing up to do rapid response training and stuff, but they too are asking, what can I do? And whether it's cooking a meal at a community shared food site, or when they go to Trader Joe's, grabbing a little extra food to donate. I think it's just that question that all of us can ask: what does transformation look like for me? What transformation is God calling me to at this juncture, whether I've been doing this work a long time, or whether I'm willing and don't have any more sense of direction beyond that. What's transformation looking like, and what's in your hand? And I think those are the questions that all of us can be asking, and God can be leading us in.
Amen. Mindy, Jen, any final words?
I was actually going to say what she said. That's so good. Yeah. Yep.
Right.
My final word is the Resistance song that's been on repeat in my head for the last week and a half. And it's that no one is getting left behind this time. We get there together, or we'll never get there at all.
Amen.
Man, that's beautiful.
It's an earworm. You've been warned.
Yes, it's also all over my algorithm.
That's a good earworm. That's a good one.
Yep.
Well, yeah, thank you all for coming here, but also more importantly for stepping into the vulnerability of putting your body in harm's way and in cold's way and in all the ways. Thanks for leading the way forward for the rest of us and sharing a bit of your journey and story with us. And I don't know, I find myself right now thankful for global immersion. That's like these ways that we network with one another. There's a few different kind of lines of networking that I'm a part of now. I'm like, this is where it's at. We need each other, and we need to have these ways of connecting with each other. So to my fellow peace fellows, that's the word fellow too many times, but thank you all for the connections and the friendships, and yeah, may God bless us as we continue doing the work together. Have a good one. And for listeners, thanks for listening. We're gonna be hopefully getting a new season started pretty soon. But in the meantime, stay tuned, because we're gonna hopefully be keeping our finger on the pulse with what's going on with the immigration stuff and how faithful people can be a part of the response. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you.